Today, we're going to be talking about the idea of how to prepare for a promotion. And you have extensive experience on this topic with being in the corporate HR for a decade. And so I'm super excited to chat with you about it. And I'd love to ask the first question of what is one of the biggest mistakes that you see people make when it comes to preparing for a promotion?
Yeah. So the biggest mistake that I see people making is not telling their manager that's something that they are aspiring to, that they're driving to. I had a client recently that came to me and she was like, Nicole, I've been passed over for promotions. Another person on my team got the promotion this year. She's like, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. And one of my first questions was, what conversations have you been having with your leadership team around your desire for a promotion and what it is that they need to see in you in order to get you to the next level? And she's like, oh, I haven't talked to anybody about it. I just figured they knew. And so your boss isn't a mind reader, right? Or maybe they just think, oh, it's not that important to them. They don't really care. And so if this is something that's important to you, that you're ready for it and you want to step up to that next level, you have to start talking about it. You have to start sharing with your leadership and with your boss that this is an aspiration for you. And they may or may not start that conversation with you proactively. This is something you might have to bring up to them. And I would say the add-on to that is the mistake that people make is that sometimes they're like, I'm going to go into my performance review, and they get themselves all pumped up and they're like, I'm going to go into my performance review and I'm going to demand that raise, or I'm going to demand that promotion. And if they don't give it to me, I quit. They get all emotional and get all worked up about it. But the reality is that decision was made 3 months ago, especially in larger organizations where they have to figure out what the budget is and they have to sit down and talk about how many people are we able to promote this year? Again, what does that budget look like? They need time to figure all of that out, and they want to give you that information and deliver that information in your performance review, likely, or around that time. So again, the first thing that I see people making a mistake if they're looking for a promotion is not talking about it at all. And then the second, very quickly right after that, is not talking about it early enough in the cycle so that they're positioned for that promotion in the cycle that they're hoping for it.
I can certainly speak for myself, and I know I'm not alone. When you start to get into the work world or you start to become more of a professional, I know that the first time I walked into a performance review, I definitely was really timid and kind of like, should I talk about it? Should I not? I was hesitant to say, this is something that I want. I didn't know that's something I should do. I had no idea the timeline. That was a huge light bulb moment for me. And I think it is for many people when they realize oh, I should have been thinking about this way sooner, but I didn't. You can't know what you don't know. So maybe clue us in a little bit of what are typical promotion cycles within companies and what is happening behind the scenes. How long is it taking people to think through this and make these decisions?
Yeah. So first, I'll definitely say that it totally depends on the company, right? Every company is going to have their own way of doing this. But the three main ways that I see companies approaching promotions is, one, they have an annual process once a year, whatever that looks like, whether it's the end of their fiscal year or the end of the calendar year, they'll do a round of promotions then. I see companies maybe do it twice a year. That's another common way for companies to structure their process. And then the third main way that people structure their process is they don't have a process. That's just not something that they have put together. And I've personally worked in organizations like that where they have brought me in to establish that promotion cadence or that performance review kind of cycle. So up until then, it ends up being the Wild West, and the people who cry the loudest or raise their hand or talk about it the most, those are the people that end up getting the promotions, because they're the ones that are, again, they're the squeaky wheels, right, who end up getting those promotions. And then actually, I would say there's a fourth There's a fourth way people tend to get promotions at companies, which is when people show up with their resignation letters and then they try to retain them by throwing a promotion at them or whatever, which is not something that I recommend companies doing. But I've certainly, again, worked in organizations where that was the culture and that was and that was the norm, which, by the way, is a giant waste of time for everybody involved, you, the employee included. But so those are the four main ways that companies tend to structure their promotion cycle. And like I said before, these conversations take a while to work through, to get everybody on board, again, because there isn't an infinite amount of budget that, even in the best of times, right, that companies can just, everybody, you get a promotion, everyone gets a promotion, right? And so these conversations, usually coupled with HR, with the leadership team all the way up the chain, are typically having these conversations, and they take some time to work through. So that's why I say a typical average conversation, or what we call calibration process, if you're familiar with that, where leaders get together and just talk about their team and talk about where are we going to allocate these different promotion budgets, that it's usually 2 to 3 months ahead of when you're actually notified that you're getting a promotion, or 2 to 3 months ahead of when you are actually seeing that take place in the system officially, your paycheck gets updated and all of that stuff, because that back end behind the scenes stuff also takes a little bit of time to get it into the system and get it into payroll and get things moving and updated there. So these conversations, they take time, and leaders often, they get frustrated because, again, they do take a lot of time, especially if they have an employee who has been vocal about wanting a promotion and driving towards that. And they're nervous that if they don't move quick enough, they may lose the employee. They may say, you guys are taking too long. I'm going to go somewhere else and get a new job and get that promotion and get that raise in that way, which is certainly a risk that companies have to weigh out in their process.
Yeah, it opens up a lot of questions for me. And I guess one of them is that on the back end, the HR, the organization itself, the leaders are taking a few months to go through the calibration process, determine how much budget they have, determine who to allocate it to. On the employee side, if I already have the awareness that, like, okay, I need to be making myself vocal, that this is what I'm looking for, I need to probably be gaining visibility, I need to be showing the value I'm demonstrating to the organization. What's the reality of the timeline for the employee? Is it like, can they at the beginning of that 3 months show up and lay that all out and be like, okay, great, now give me the promotion? Or really is it months in the making, so that by the time it gets to that 3 months, like, you're already on the radar of people and you're already in the population of people for consideration?
Yeah, 100%. If you know that the organization is taking 2 to 3 months to have these conversations, you need to back up your conversation even further. 6 months is a really great general timeline to have that meeting or have that conversation with your boss to let them know this is what you're looking for. But honestly, anywhere between 6 to 12 months, right? This could be a great conversation, say, after your annual performance review, or during that performance review, you get that feedback for that year. And then you say, hey, I'm really looking for the next step in my career. What do I need to do, or how do I need to show up, or what do I need to be focused on in the next 6 to 12 months in order to be eligible for a promotion next cycle? That's really the ideal timeline of those kinds of conversations, right? Where you are just establishing right from the get-go at the beginning of a performance year what it is that you're looking for and what you're trying to drive towards, so that you also give your boss enough time, your leader enough time, to make sure they're helping you get positioned for that they're helping you get stretch assignments, or again, that they're just establishing really clearly with you the expectations on what it takes to get to that next level, so that you have time to work through that and develop those skills, hit those goals, whatever they are. But it also gives them time to ensure that you are getting yourself visible to the next level leader, and they're also doing the same, that they also have enough time to advocate for you on their behalf. Because the other thing that people don't understand always, that behind the scenes, it's not just your manager that you need to show that you're ready for the promotion, because it's unlikely that they get full reign on the promotion selection, right? There's a broader organization here and there's a broader budget here. So oftentimes they have to talk to their leader or their next level leader even, and their peers, to talk about, hey, I've got Jenny over here. She's crushing it. She's absolutely already meeting the standards for that next level. And those people need to see it too and agree or be bought in to be like, yeah, absolutely. Let's make sure we get Jenny on that short list for promotion, because they also have their whole team that they're trying to get promoted as well. Again, resources are not infinite. So everybody, and it sounds terrible, but everyone's basically duking it out for the small amount of promotions that a company can have every year. Not only do you need to be visible and be demonstrating your value to your boss, but you also need to be ensuring that your boss's boss and kind of those peer leaders also recognize that as well. And that just honestly just takes time. It takes time to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you mentioned how much stuff is happening behind the scenes and how many stakeholders there are. And I have seen it's where people can get really disgruntled during this whole process, is that there usually is a lack of transparency of what's going on and how decisions are being made. And I'm sure this is going to depend on every organization, but maybe you have a little bit of behind the scenes that you can share. What really is happening if there's multiple people there's five potential candidates who've been put forward for a promotion, and realistically there's budget for two of them? How is that decision being made?
Yeah, again, oftentimes the leaders are all getting together and they're hashing this out. They're talking through their talent and discussing a couple of things. One is who, again, is clearly just hitting their metrics, hitting their goals. They're also delivering not only the what, but the how they're delivering is also in alignment with the organization's values, right? So doing your job really well, that's table stakes. That is the price of entry, right? Then after that, we have to make sure that the value that you're bringing to the organization is articulated. You've been able to talk about that. Then your boss has to be able to talk about the value that you're bringing to the organization. And let's just be truly honest here. Like, every role brings a certain value to an organization, and they're not all the same, right? How people impact the business, every role is going to be a little bit different there. And each company may even view that differently. So for me, as an example, my career was in HR. I'm not the one that's bringing in sales. I'm not the one that is actually coding the product, anything like that. So sometimes it can be really hard to tie the work that I was doing in HR to demonstrate really clear value to the organization. Some organizations automatically valued HR already and just saw what we were doing and the value we brought. Other organizations, not as much. And so that was directly reflected in our compensation and, again, in the promotions and things like that we were getting. So you just have to recognize that. What's the role that I'm doing? What are they paying me to do? And how is that impacting the broader organization? So that's going to come into play as well. And then frankly, just who knows you? Like, you have to be doing your job well. You have to articulate your value, but you also have to just be really visible to the people that are making these decisions. I can't tell you how many times I was in these types of conversations where somebody said, "Oh, I'm gonna talk about Nicole now," and the leader was like, "I don't know who that is," or, "Yeah, the name rings a bell, but I'm not quite sure." They're not really standing out to me one way or another, because that's what happens, right? The rock stars stand out and the people who have issues stand out. Those people, the majority of people in the middle can tend to fall to the wayside. So again, it's important to do really solid work, understand the value that you're bringing to the organization, and then talk about it and make it really incredibly visible to those stakeholders who are making the decisions. Let me add one more thing. There also is an element of the squeaky wheel in this too, right? So if they're saying Jenny and Nicole both are well deserving of promotions, we got to pick one. They're probably going to look to see, if we don't give it to Jenny, is she going to leave? And are we willing to take that risk? And is that the same with Nicole? If we don't give it to Nicole, is she going to leave? And are we willing to take that risk? So if you were someone who was really vocal about your desire for a promotion, they may take that into consideration, that they're like, oh, Nicole's talked about this a lot. We've been working on this for a year together. We need to make sure that Nicole's kind of top on that list. The other thing is Nicole just got a promotion last year. So, it's Jenny's turn, right? So there's an element of whose turn is it, and who are they concerned might leave if they don't get the promotion. So those are some of the other trade-offs leaders are also honestly really thinking through and discussing.
Yeah. And if you walk out of that situation, if you go into it feeling like, I am a rock star, I am performing, I have hit all my metrics, I feel very deserving at this point, and the cards don't go in your favor, maybe two questions here. One is, what can you do in the interim? Is there something you can do if you want to stay at the organization, to say, what can I do so I don't have to wait a whole nother year to maybe be in this situation again? Or how do you recognize that really maybe it's a point for me to start looking outside?
Yeah, no, great questions. So one thing that you can do in the interim, if this happens to you, is maybe you can negotiate, hey, can we relook at this again in 6 months from now? Maybe in what you would call like an off-cycle promotion, to say, hey, if I hit certain metrics, or let's relook at this in 2 quarters from now instead of an entire year. That might be possible. So you can have that really frank conversation with your leadership to see if that's something that they're open to or not. Again, if there are some gaps, or there are some things that you still need just a little bit of time to hit in order to get to that next level, now's the time to make sure that you are really focusing in on those things. I had a client 2 years ago now. She was really trying to get to that next level, trying to get to the director level. And one of the sticking points for her leadership was, directors have this many people on their team in order to be qualified for the director title. Because that definitely comes into play when you're talking about leadership levels, because as you work up in the organization, there's just less promotions to go around, right? Not everybody can be CEO. So as you move up, there's going to be less and less opportunities for that next level, right? Just because there's just not as much there. And so she was just getting frustrated because the scope of her work and the value and the impact that she was bringing to the organization far exceeded a lot of her peers who had larger teams. But because they were like, nope, in our process or in our policy, you have to have so many people on your team in order to qualify for that next level up. And luckily, we were able to put together a really great proposal, if you will, that she went into her leadership team to really justify and to show why an exception was appropriate in this case. And I'm happy to report that she came out on that other side with that well-deserving promotion. So that's one thing. You can try to look for an exception, something like that. But at the end of the day, there just might not be the opportunity that you're looking for that promotion, right? Sometimes what I say sometimes to my clients is that sometimes the organization outgrows you, and sometimes you outgrow the organization, right? Like you're moving, your career is progressing at a particular pace, and maybe just the organization you're in is just not keeping up with the pace that you're setting for yourself. And that's okay. So you might need to decide, okay, I've been waiting for this promotion for X period of time. I'm feeling like I'm continuing to spin my wheels. I know if I go external that I'm going to be seen and valued in a different organization, and I'm willing to make that move in order to make that happen. A lot of my clients come to me because they are underutilized. Like they've got amazing skills, amazing experience, and frankly, they're a little bored because they're, not to say that they don't have a lot of work to do, because they do, but they're just not being utilized in the best way. And they see that. And that's also really frustrating and can be really draining. So that might be an indicator to move on. The other indicator is that, frankly, people are just telling you, Jenny, the promotion is not going to happen here. For whatever reason, the promotion is not going to happen. I am actually working with a client right now that, unfortunately, that's the situation that she's in, that she's at the director level. Just there has been some things that happened in this really large organization over time that they've just said, listen, the promotion is not going to happen here, or it's particularly in this department. So either you need to move departments in order to get to that next level, or you need to exit and find that promotion elsewhere. So that's where she's at. And so that's what we're actively working on that together right now to help her get to that next level that she so deserves in an organization that sees her value.
That's so interesting. Part of me feels appreciative of the transparency around it. Okay, at least I know where I'm at, and now I can do something with that information. I also am a little bit surprised because I would imagine it seems like there could be some kind of liability to say, this is not on the table for you here. Is that common within an organization, or how can somebody justify you have a cap to your in this department?
Yeah, there's certainly some liability there from the organization level to that. I would say if you are a leader having a conversation with one of your employees that it's abundantly clear to you that they will not be successful at that next level, you need to be able to back that up with some really clear data and really clear examples as to why you feel like that person's capped in this organization. Now, again, sometimes, especially as we're going up into the levels in organizations, there might be a change in strategic direction that requires a different level or a different type of skill that maybe you just haven't developed yet. And they need to bring somebody from the outside in order to make whatever happen in the business that they're trying to drive towards, which I think is a bit of what's going on with my client that I just mentioned. Her new boss just started in the last couple of weeks. And so again, instead of promoting her, they decided to bring in somebody from the outside. And that's a strategic business decision, right? That leaders need to make. They need to decide, are these skills that are required for us to move the business forward? Do we already have them internally? And can we train up wherever the gaps are? Or do we want to buy that talent off the street and bring it in and enable that person to hit the ground running? It's a strategic business decision. I could go on about this particular topic about whether to promote internally or bring in some external talent, because there's a time and place for both of those strategies. But the risk of bringing in somebody externally is that you might end up losing a really amazing employee internally because they're now seeing that their potential is now capped at the organization.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. One thing is sticking in my mind that you mentioned, I kind of want to circle back to, and it's this idea of the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I think sometimes when it comes to career advice, you can hear something like that, and it's a little bit ambiguous sometimes of like, how do I go about doing that within my organization? And I wonder how do you toe the line of making yourself visible and continually making people aware that you would like a promotion without becoming that annoying person who's just repeating the message and it starts to fall on deaf ears?
Yeah, no, I think that's an amazing question, because actually this is something that I believe holds people back from having these conversations. Like I said, my one client that I've been working with for a while on her promotion, which by the way, she did get in December, and we're continuing to work together. But her big thing was, I'm getting passed over for promotions. I'm not telling anybody that I want them. But the reason why she wasn't telling anyone was because she was afraid she was going to be too pushy, that people, just like you said, that people were going to think that she's just a squeaky wheel, that she's really annoying, those kinds of things. And then it's actually going to backfire on her, which is a valid concern, right? So we worked on having these strategic conversations with her boss regularly. It's not every single day. She's like, oh, hey, by the way, boss, just don't forget, I want the promotion this year. Just don't forget. It's during those maybe monthly one-on-one career conversations you're having with your boss, or maybe your company does quarterly performance check-ins, which is also another common performance cycle. And so maybe every quarter you're sitting down and you're checking in on your goals, you're talking through, how you're tracking and how things are going. And that would be the appropriate time just to say, hey, here's what I've achieved in this last quarter. This is what I'm focused on and working on. Is that still the right things for me to be focused on, knowing that I'm looking for this promotion this year? And so that's how you have that conversation. And I really discourage people from giving people ultimatums, right? To say, if you don't give me this promotion, I'm going to leave. And there might be an appropriate time to share that, just to say, listen, if this is not going to happen here for me, or if you feel like I've tapped out here in this organization, then I might have to look externally to continue to grow in my career, because that's really important to me. That's sharing facts, that's sharing how you're feeling in a really open, honest way with your leader. But it's not giving them an ultimatum, right? It's not like demanding or commanding that promotion, because what happens whenever you talk to anybody in that way, right? That the other person is going to go on the defensive. That's going to make them feel like, okay, we're not in this together. This is an us versus them battle. And what you're looking for is to create a partnership with your boss, with your leadership, that you are working together for the better, because not just for the betterment of your career, but also for the betterment of the organization, right? And so you have to talk to your leadership about your desire to get a promotion more than once, more than twice, but a lot of it has to do with the tone and the context in which you're bringing up this conversation.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned so many pieces of advice already. Maybe if I could ask you, if we had to drill it down, if there's one piece of advice that you could give to people who are preparing for a promotion, what would that one thing be?
Make yourself visible. Make yourself visible and learn how to articulate your value.
Nice. So, nice and concise. I'd love to end with one question. As we've been talking about this topic, I feel like we could talk about it for probably 100 more hours. What's coming up for you? What's something you would want to remember or take away from this conversation?
I would say that if people are out here listening and maybe their mind is blown a little bit, I have worked in corporate HR for over 10 years. I carved out a bit of a specialty around performance and around succession planning and things like that. And these were just secrets that I figured out just due to the nature of my role. So if you're feeling like, Nicole, I don't know any of this stuff, I didn't realize any of this, or maybe I knew intellectually, but like in practice, I haven't really been doing it, just know that's okay. Like, you're not super behind, and just know that you wanting a promotion is okay, and it's safe, and it's normal. And this is how people grow and develop in their careers. And you asking for it, no one is going to think, again, as long as you've got the tone right and you're having this conversation in the right context, no one is going to think that you are selfish or greedy or pushy or anything like that. But you have to articulate your value, and you have to share that this is what you want in your career, because nobody cares about your career more than you do.